This is Talking My Walking. I am Rodrigo Ribeiro, and today I'm going to talk about the age of man, the age of capital, and the age of tech. There are this idea that we live in the Anthropocene, the age of man. And it is true that many of the Earth systems are managed by men today. So the man is already a geological force. That is true. I don't doubt it. But of course, that is driven by capital. That's why we live in the Capitalocene. Because what drives the economy is the pursuit of profit and self-interest and the accumulation of wealth and concentration of power. And that is, for that to happen, capital is what matters. That's why we live in the Capitalocene. But the Anthropocene, at least in my opinion, started long ago. And it started with the rise of the monotheistic religions. The religions that put man as the controller of the resources, as the entity, the species in charge of the earth. And that, of course, it's explains, of course, together with the rise of the religion, the most important religion, which is the divinization of money, the creation of the god Mammon or Manon. So this together started what I call the imperialist civilization paradigm, which is based always, empires always have always thrive on the on tech supremacy. That's what empires have used, tech supremacy, by mastering some sort of piece of technology that would give them an advantage when fighting, when conquering peoples that were less civilized, less developed. These three aspects of the imperialistic civilization, this paradigm of civilization, this is not civilization. This is a form of civilization controlled by the people that should never have the history on their hands or at their feet. I'm talking about from ideologues, the ones that make, that design, that create narratives, and the ones that have the power impetus, which means the ones that really, the psychopaths, the ones that are driven by power. Some that have the function, the role to create the narratives that support the others that do the beating. That not the ones that do the beating. The ones that do the beating, that's the ones that are used. But for the ones that want to accumulate wealth and concentrate power, but they need the narratives. But sometimes they are not the ones that write or draw the narratives. So the age of man, the age of capital, and the age of tech are characteristics of the imperialistic civilization paradigm. And that's the reality that is still prevailing today. And this is the implicit cultural narratives that support it, cultural and ideological narratives, and of course political, that support this paradigm are still, they are dominant. It doesn't matter if from the left to the right political spectrum, science, arts, ethics, most of what is produced, most thought, most creative endeavors, they do reflect it. They even, that's how I see it. I mean, it's so obvious. That is the reality we have today has a long history. It was not born with the age of discoveries or with the industrial revolution or even with the tech revolution or the agricultural revolution, with the use of widespread chemicals and synthetic fertilizers. So these are consequences, which means the Anthropocene we have today is not the driver of the ecocide and overshoot that is real. It is already a consequence of the idea of the age of man and the age of capital and the age of tech that was behind the existence and the creation of this civilizational imperialistic civilization paradigm that became dominant. And it became dominant not because of the human condition, because the many were convinced and or coerced to obey, to follow the masters. It was violence and deception that has always been behind the paradigm that so many of us believe is the pinnacle of the human development, which is not because there have not been discoveries and not because science and arts and literature and poetry and philosophy and everything else that had the opportunity to flourish and thrive with this system, but everything in the end was subjected and for the purpose of making this elite, to serve this elite in any way, aesthetically, to give them, to make their world, but for the, I mean, it was this idea of a god on the top, that the god can be a king, can be an emperor, it was not the transformation of humanity as a god. It was the elevation of a very tiny portion of humanity. Elites, and this vision of a single person, a single god, like this authority, this absolute authority with special features. As I said before, emperors, kings, rulers, conquerors, all these, the ones that were responsible for the cohesion of a nation, of an empire. But that cohesion, at the same time, that's the paradox of expansion and accumulation and plunder, and the thirst for power that makes it unsustainable. Because what happens is that always the expansion, it becomes overextended, and then it becomes unsustainable in economically, military, and culturally. So this is why the collapse of empires are part of the nature of the empire. And but nonetheless, there is always people, there are always the opportunists, the psychopaths and sociopaths, megalomaniac with megalomaniac projects. This idea, they are above normalcy. They are not part of they are not the same kind as the ordinary citizenry, or even since we divided humanity, we divided people into castes and classes for the obvious purpose, for control. That's what it is. Exploitation, of course. The exploitation needs control. So this one doesn't work without the other. So the reality of our days is that the Anthropocene, Capitalocene, and Technocene is the result of a long process, and that's why we want us to. My point is, I think we need this context, because either we understand how we are so embedded, so influenced by this, that because this influences how we perceive ourselves, how we perceive human condition, how we perceive human relations, how we perceive civilization, what is the meaning of civilization, what's the meaning of life, the meaning and purpose of life, and how we perceive our relation with nature, with other living beings, and with the cosmos also. And then we come to the realization that what has happened to us through a lot of millennia, most of it is a web of deceit for the accumulation of wealth, capital, and the concentration of power in the hands of tech, of oligarchs and plutocrats. And now what we have is the rise of the tech oligarchs, because we really came to the to the situation where technology is now technoscientism. It's the religion, the most important religion, along with technofixism. So the rise of the tech oligarchy is also a consequence. And that because this culture, this brother culture, gives the platform for this to happen. And we are, again, convinced and coerced into accept it. And we are where can we achieve freedom through technology? I mean, what I mean by this is that can we become more free and have better lives with technology? Yes, technology can help us to achieve a better life. And by better life, I mean, what I mean with a better life, at least that's how I see it, it's always in time. Not only that we have lives with less sacrifice, physical sacrifice, because if we have less sacrifice, but we are sacrificing, we have sacrificial zones and peoples, and which means that we still live under the idea that everything that exists on this planet is just for the purpose of our well-being. Or the purpose is not our well-being, the purpose is the accumulation of wealth and concentration of power. The result is more concentration of the growth of the Anthropocene, which means the age of man becomes more powerful, because the sacrificial zones will need to grow, to expand, and the sacrificial peoples also are also required, and then there is no limits. It can be the seabed to explore minerals and whatever is needed for a tech civilization, for the Technocene, for the expansion of the Technocene, and the expansion of capital, and consequently the expansion of the Anthropocene. We cannot think about this is how it works. If we live under the spell of the pursuit of self-interest, accumulation of wealth and private property, and the pursuit of happiness through mindless consumerism, we are not becoming more free with technology. What happens that we become more dependent on technology, and which means that the commodification, we are more dependent on commodification, and convenience just makes us more dependent, not more free. And then we confuse that we have easier lives. It's true, because technology can really make our lives easier, especially physically, not exactly psychologically or emotionally, because we are not exactly in a better condition now than before, than the previous generations in emotional and psychological terms, psycho-emotional, psycho-affective terms. But for some of us, there are always the ones that benefit. There is not even the worst political and economic system that has ever existed that doesn't make somebody happy and better. Some groups. That's why they persist, because for as long as a system is benefiting someone, those who are benefiting will try hard to keep it, to prolong it in time, because they don't want to lose their privileges. What they want is to become more powerful, to accumulate more wealth, to have more control. This is the reality of a class caste-based society and the imperialistic civilizational paradigm. And this is not about giving us more freedom. We don't have more surveillance now, and we don't have more forms of control, of mass surveillance and control, to give us more freedom. It's not like those that believe that they don't have nothing to hide, therefore they are not afraid of this and that. Yeah, in a just and in a just society where truth is really important, or would be really important, trust would be natural. But unfortunately, that's not where we are. And deceit, the web of deceit, that's where we live, has only one purpose: to control us, to keep us under control. But deceit is not enough. Deceit is a form of power. The real power needs it requires, again, capital and technology that can be used to produce weapons, to produce surveillance tools, I mean, you know what I mean. So this needs to be these two sides of the coin that power requires. Real mechanisms to use violent means for control, and the web of deceit. So therefore, for those who believe that they have nothing to hide, they of course are delusional, because it's not about having being an open book that makes us safer. The only thing that makes us a little safer is our willingness to comply. If we comply and obey and have blind hope, we might be safe. It doesn't guarantee absolute safety, but at least gives you the kind of freedom that for most people they believe it's freedom. It's not freedom, because freedom is, for me at least, is the ability for us to use as much time as possible of our lives to our human development. Not for our personal individual development, as so many say, that they never complain with the system. I always say that it's about you, about this is for your development. You can get rid of this and that and this problem, that problem, if you do this and that and so forth. And if you practice this, if you buy this, if you believe this, you will be free, you will be happy, and so forth and so on. No, that's again part of the web of deceit, and we need to understand it. It's you. It is part of a different, the real pedagogy for freedom. It requires a different paradigm of education, but a different paradigm of education, it needs a different political economy and a different paradigm of civilization and societal paradigm and civilizational paradigm. Because all these things go together. We don't have the educational paradigm that we have is to serve a system, is not to make us more free, is not to train us to analyze the reality where we live, to have analyzed lives, and to put things together, to put the pieces of the puzzle together. We are not even supposed to look for questions or to think about cui bono, who benefits, why this, why this and that. Because so many things only make sense if we look cui bono. You know, we have to look into it. And the problem is that our societies, most of what we do, or a great portion of what we have to do, of our duties and tasks and performances and roles and functions, they are not for the collective well-being. That's why we need to understand that we are not working for us, or every time that when we believe that we are working for us and we are benefiting with what we are doing, which means that we are, for example, earning a good salary, it's because we are enhancing someone else, which means the oligarchy and the oligarchs and plutocrats, helping them to become more powerful, more wealthy, and have more control. And when this doesn't follow this logic, it doesn't work. They stop funding, they stop investing in anything that doesn't serve the purpose of enhancing their power, their wealth accumulation, and control, which is always for control. Because wealth, which means capital, would not be a thing. Nobody would care about that if it was not for control, if you do not give people the ability to control land, territories, peoples, and to control our minds, to control the institutions, to control the professional managerial class. They believe they are free. I mean, many understand they are not free because they know if they don't comply, they will face consequences. So this is the kind of freedom. That's why more freedom or freedom has nothing to do with the technological advancements. Freedom has to do with having control over our lives and our inner lives, not by following anybody, but by understanding that we all are this is crucial, by understanding that we all are bits and pieces of knowledge, of other people's knowledge and experience. And it matters a lot. It matters for the good and for the worse, which matters to help us to be more, to become more free, or to become more dependent and more under control of others. That's why it's not about following, it's about respecting and admiring, but also about being able to criticize and have and grow the analytical power, analytical critical power. Because this is not, we don't understand things automatically. We need to work on them. We don't understand that we are being deceived automatically. We need to understand how language is used, how the fallacies, the logical fallacies work. I always have to emphasize this, because this is why so many people believe they understand the reality and they are being deceived. And we all are deceived. And that's the point. That's why we need a culture that is resilient, that has this kind of pedagogy that allows us to become resilient against being used by others. Because we want cooperation. We want an economy of reciprocity, cooperation, reciprocity. Because we are a social species, we depend on each other. Our survival depends on cooperation and reciprocity. That's why an economy needs to reproduce it. That's why we cannot have this imperialistic mindset, expansion, and an economy that reflects it. Expansionism, growthism, hyperdevelopment, acceleration, consumerism. You know, this is not what we need. We can want it because we can become dependent on it. Our supposedly happiness, not joy of life. Joy of life is something that we also can train in our daily lives, because what we do and our relations are meaningful. Therefore, the joy of life comes together with it. It's a consequence. It's not something that we buy. It's something of the consequence of the meaningfulness. This has to do with the real life. What we do with your real life and our relations. The reason why we have these epidemics, these so-called mental disorders epidemics, it's because of the meaningless lives and relations that we are, what we have to learn and to do that are meaningless. That is imbecile, that is a process of imbecilization. It's not a process of making us more free. It's a process that makes us more imbecile, that stupidifies us, that transforms us into cogs. We do not this is why technology is has this power, this double sword power, that in one end it really helps, makes our lives more easier. We can have so many things today at the tip of our fingers, that and makes it very convenient. But again, convenience makes us more dependent, doesn't make us more free. When we have more time, many of them have more free time, but what do we do with the free time? Do we become more free ourselves? That's what we work on it? Or we are just playing a game that is dictated by others? And this is so the Anthropocene, Capitalocene, and Technocene are this is not about, this doesn't express the human condition. This expresses the control of civilization, the control of the institutions and the narratives by the wrong people. That we are even, they create systems, cultural systems and moral narratives to glorify them. And that's what we do. We glorify them. We don't even understand how deeply deranged they are. They are not. It doesn't matter how they look. They might have baby faces. They might be They might become philanthropists, which also part of the problem, not part of the solution. But they give this. People fall for these kind of things, and they don't understand that these people usually are the wrong people to control society. I'm not against technology. I think technology can help humanity to develop their humanity, our humanity. But for as long as technology is for the purpose of the pursuit of self-interest, the maximization of profit, accumulation of wealth, concentration of power, technology is never as the only purpose to make it easier for them, and to make them acquire more control over us, and over the earth systems, and over everything, because they don't see limits, which is another problem. Freedom is relational. It's not limitless. Freedom is a relational process. It's not an abstract thing. It's not an abstract ideology or system of values. Do we need the values? We need the principles, we need the norms, we need the rules, we need the laws that's for sure, because if we want to have an organized society, we need it. But that's not the thing itself. That's just to provide regulation for us as complex societies to be organized and functional. But we cannot confuse it with morality, or with the real purpose of what is the real purpose of a society, what is the real purpose of an economy, what is the real purpose of civilization. And that's what we need to understand if we want to free ourselves from the spell of the age of man, the age of capital, and the age of technology. We need to build a culture. We need to have narratives. We need to have intellectual tools. This is not about left, right, this or that. This is about a set of principles that to help us to write the rules, the laws, the principles, the values for a civilizational paradigm and a political economy model that serves society within ecological boundaries. So this is always about narratives, because our minds, control of human mind is through narratives, that spread ideologies that can make us fundamentalists, that keep us encircled. It's like we just don't see. We are living in a well. We can only perceive the world that way. We don't make. Most of us don't really try because of convenience. Because it's hard. Because it's much easier to just go along to get along. But that we are just growing the problem. The problem doesn't go away. The tumor doesn't go away. It's still growing. And even for those that that are expecting the multipolar order to change this paradigm, I mean, that's not what I see is not a change in paradigm. It's a change. It seems to be better. It is challenging the paradigm, the imperialistic paradigm, the Western imperialistic paradigm. This idea of absolute power, hegemony. It is not challenging the deep roots, and so which means that the imperialistic civilizational paradigm is not really being challenged, and the ecological civilization people are talking about is not holistic. It's not. It's really about the glorification of technology. It's about the technoscientism and technofixism, and which means that this idea of ecological civilization does not really challenge the age of man, the age of capital, and the age of technology, which means that the Anthropocene, the Capitalocene, and the Technocene is not really being challenged. Not because this is not about being against mankind, humankind, not about being even against capital, not being against technology. It's about understanding that these ages are exactly the result of this this imperialistic civilizational paradigm, where a society, a caste-based society system is crucial to understand it, and expansion and control and deception are at the core of it. It's not about liberation, and this is exactly what we need to tackle, or we might not, we as a species might not even survive if we don't do it, because I mean, this should be obvious, but of course the web of deception is so thick, so multi-layered, so confusing, so much it is ubiquitous for sure, and creates many different delusional trends and tendencies that makes it very difficult to navigate, you know. But that's one of the tasks that we should fight for our humanity. Not for it all starts there, and it is possible. This is not an impossibility. So of course it requires a critical mass. That's why we need movements, organized movements and groups, and to have a public debate that doesn't really exist. But I mean, because there are many discussions, but that seems to, in my opinion, in my humble opinion, it seems to lack this holistic and comprehensive feature that is required, that to allow us to make sense, to have the bigger picture, the bigger and the deeper, to understand the roots of the problem, and to really to make the best diagnosis possible, because only the best diagnosis, the more accurate diagnosis, can help us to come up with the solutions, the answers that we need. That's what I think. This is not about following leaders or authorities or experts or academics or, heroes and saviors and, any kind of this thing. It's about a collective process. It's about it's about a conscious transformational process that is for all of us, for as many as possible, not just for elites to tell us what to do. This is also part of this stupid paradigm that we are always expecting others to save us, to teach us, to no. I mean, again, that's not because we should not admire and respect and learn with each other. That's not about that. It's about this stupid idea of followerism, of layers, of degrees, of categories, of separation, of superior and inferior. Just, we are all equals, and we need to behave and think as if it matters. Okay? Thank you for listening. I will be back soon